Gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. There was a lot in your testimony to talk about. I wish we had a lot of time to kind of go over all that in detail. Unfortunately, our committee process is kind of just ask a question and get an answer instead of having a real conversation. And it's a shame. I wish we could get into kind of a roundtable about some of these things, particularly the commentary about homelessness and crime and so forth. I'll just bring a couple of statistics into the conversation. I just looked it up. The federal government, the HUD report on homelessness. It's the annual. Let me see. What is it called? The 2024 annual homelessness assessment report to Congress shows that there's about 3,500 people homeless in the state of Connecticut. And we just looked up on Realtor.com, and there's about 3,500 apartments actually available on Realtor.com. It seems very interesting that those numbers are almost identical. I hear what you're saying about a housing shortage, and it's particularly when it comes to affordable housing. But I would just ask a question. I'm a realtor and a small landlord. I own a few single-family houses that I rent out. But I'm frustrated at the laws that are coming from our state government, and I feel like, as the pressure mounts, there's a proposal to reduce security deposits to 1 month, to cap rents, to put more onus on landlords to keep tenants beyond the expiration of a lease. These things are making me wary of continuing to be a landlord. And as a realtor, I deal with a lot of landlords also. That's how I kind of got into the business, dealing mostly with property owners. And they're telling me that they're frustrated and concerned. What do you say to people like me, I guess is my question, when we say that the policies that we're making here are making it difficult for housing providers, and therefore maybe there's people leaving that marketplace? Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator, and appreciate your comments. I'm a realtor too. Been a realtor this is my 30th year as a realtor. I can tell you that the frustration that I see and that I feel is the fact that you can't put people in places because nobody can afford it, and the fact that we need more supply in the state. I don't think there's. Now you talked about laws, but the laws you talked about, I think, are actually proposals, not. And nothing's crossed the finish line yet because we're early in the session. But what I see is that you see families who are frustrated because they can't afford to live where they would like to live, or they can't find a place because there's no supply, or they have to live in such a far place that it exasperates our transportation and our traffic problems across the state of Connecticut. So I think I see it a little bit differently than you do. And the fact that what landlords or what the public wants is more supply so that they actually have an affordable place to live. And landlords will respond to that accordingly in a supply and demand situation, which is completely American and completely capitalistic. We do have a responsibility to build affordable housing, I believe, for folks and to help our homeless population. Connecticut did very well years ago, and in Fairfield County we came within maybe 3 or 4 people, maybe about half a dozen, of actually eliminating chronic homelessness. We have fallen backwards on that since the pandemic. We have to get back in. We have to get that number back down again. But the frustration I see is not from the landlords, because landlords will abide by the rules that everybody else is abiding by. The frustration I see is with the people who can't afford something because they're spending over 30% of their income trying to live in a place and also put food on the table and also give their kids the opportunities they need and also make sure that kids have clothes and also make sure that they can heat their homes and everything else. So that's the frustration I see.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that answer. I don't disagree. I mean, there are a lot of cost drivers, obviously, that are impacting us all. The cost of electricity is a factor for everybody in this room. Everyone in the whole place is upset about their electric bills, and yet there's a lot of inaction in the legislature on that. Inflation is out of control. I mean, we saw what happened in the federal government. They printed a lot of excess money. We have 20% or more inflation over the last several years. So everything's going up. The statistics that I'm seeing show that the the amount of rent, while it's going up exorbitantly, and it is, as you mentioned, and I completely agree, rents are out of control. The cost of homes is out of control. I just showed a house yesterday in Stamford rather, that was about $770,000, and I can remember just like 3 or 4 years ago that would have been a $300,000 house. It really is shocking how much things have changed. But the factors that are changing it are factors affecting everything. The cost of milk and eggs and gasoline and everything else is all being impacted by extraneous factors, and I think government is a big part of that. To your point about proposals, the mere fact that we're considering proposals that might put more impediments on housing providers is a message to them that says, gee, are you going to be welcome in the state? What if these things actually become law? I'm looking at that personally. My rental property are all single-family houses, for example, and I could just turn them over and sell them, and they would become owner-occupied in an instant. And in fact, I got a tremendous opportunity in the marketplace right now. But I do rent them out, and at very modest amounts. Those will disappear from the marketplace. They will disappear from the 3,500 available units if laws like this that are proposed are passed. And I know that there's other people thinking this way. And I don't mean to turn this into a speech. I'm supposed to be asking questions. Let me ask this question. One of the drivers, I think, for the lack of housing, especially when it comes to rentals, I think is illegal immigration. We know that there's around 85,000 driver's licenses have been issued in the state of Connecticut to illegal immigrants. Do you feel that is a factor preventing citizens from being able to find affordable housing? Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Leaders?
I'll take that. Senator, I don't. I think general poverty is what the issue is. And I know in New Haven there are a number of census tracts, and I'm sure the same is true in Bridgeport, Hartford, and other places where more than 50% of the households do not have cars. They have to rely on public transportation. The rents in the areas where they live are going up. So they are getting squeezed, and they really are not in a position to be able to move anywhere else except something that is on the bus line, or something where they're told, well, move farther out. Well, that's somebody who has transportation access to a vehicle can do that, but somebody who is stuck needing to live close to a bus line can't. So transportation issues, housing issues, and issues of poverty are, I think, the things that have an overlap everywhere. And I think that to talk about it in terms of undocumented people is just to sort of try to put a political overlay on an issue that's much more general.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that response. Forgive me, but I certainly am not trying to put a political overlay on anything. It's a matter of fact. You got 100,000 or more extra people in the state that are not even citizens of our country. And, whether you think that's good policy or not, it is certainly impacting the availability of housing. It has to. Those people have to be living somewhere in the state. We know that there's only 3,500 people that are homeless. So solving the homeless problem is an entirely separate issue from the lack of affordable housing, in my view. But I do agree, poverty is a factor. And certainly the disparity between the amount of money that people have in their pocket to afford to pay their bills, whether it's electric bills or groceries or rent, and the cost of those things is a problem. The state of Connecticut has been run a certain way for decades, which is a very powerful Democratic Party in creating policy that is engaged in expanding government programs, wealth redistribution. It seems to me that those policies haven't worked if the goal was to address poverty. I think that what needs to happen is more opportunity. We've got to find ways to get people to have incentives to do the right thing. And that brings me to the point of the argument about our plans for building more housing. I guess the question here is it's an issue between the desire of certain entities to create housing and put it up, and the towns that have to make decisions about their local planning and zoning. Are you suggesting that we should just throw out home rule and the state of Connecticut should be able to dictate to towns that they have to put up more housing in as you described, transit-oriented developments, or in places where the state government feels that there should be more dense housing? Or are we going to protect the rights of municipalities to be able to listen to their own residents about making zoning decisions? Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, just real quickly say, there's sometimes there's areas of agreement amongst folks who don't always agree all the time. And I would agree with you that the prices of eggs and milk and other groceries over the last 3 weeks have really gone up a lot. And that really should be looked at, especially when promises were made on day one. I would say that, and I'll let Senator Looney answer this because I think he'll have a stronger answer because he's so passionate about this, but I would say that some communities have used zoning as a basis for discrimination for decades. And we have to, if that is holding us back from creating and building more affordable housing, then we have to use all the tools necessary in order to make sure that we are building housing for the people of this state. While there are communities that are building housing because they're doing it, again, for the economic reasons and maybe some moral reasons, there are communities that do not want to do it, and some of it may be based on past reasons that I just articulated. So we should be using incentives, and we should also be using any other means necessary to make sure that Connecticut realizes its full potential to build this economy for the future, and that people have a place to live that is affordable, whether it's market rate or whether it's done through affordable housing.
I'll just add to that, Senator, that I certainly believe that home rule is an important principle, but it is not always the dispositive and most important principle. I think if you look at the U.S. Constitution, you will see that sub-state levels of government are not even mentioned, so that the concept of federalism is a concept of an agreement of two sovereigns, the United States and the 50 individual states. The powers granted to municipalities are those that they have only because of the states and whatever decision the state makes to give them. They don't have the status that states have relative to the national government. So there are certain issues of equity and justice where I think the principles of home rule have to be somewhat more flexible, and if there is a greater state overriding good, that has to be the dominant issue. We are not 169 separate municipal fiefdoms. We are the state of Connecticut.
Thank you. I just really quickly want to say we're into our second hour. We're on about 7 speakers so far, so just keep that in mind. Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll say one more question. It's really, it's difficult because I'm in a role of having to ask questions. I would much rather debate you gentlemen. Hopefully we will get that chance to do that. I will just respond to say that to blame President Trump on the cost of eggs is an absurdity. Hundreds of thousands of birds were ordered to be killed by the previous administration because of the bird flu. It's a fact. The bird flu, and they destroyed those eggs. I mean, if you guys want to, anyway. I clearly am outnumbered in this room, but satisfaction doesn't change the facts, is all I'm suggesting. And I think you'll find over the next several years the cost of goods and services in this country are going to be kept more in control because there'll be less government, less wasteful spending. And I would just cheer on President Trump and the Doge effort because they're doing Lord's work.
I don't think
Let
it's
me
the
just
Lord.
say.
Not sure it's the Lord. Not sure it's the Lord.
So,
I would ask members of the crowd of the public to please keep your noise down. Thank you.
So I think I got my answer on the subject of whether or not you are in favor of maintaining home rule. It sounds to me very clearly that you believe that the state of Connecticut, because we establish municipalities and give them their authority, we have the right to override their local zoning. I would disagree. I think that the towns elect people for those positions on purpose, and they should make those decisions. I just want to clarify one thing, which is that Senator Duff, you were very clear in saying that zoning rules have been used for discrimination. Is it your contention that these towns that are refusing to change their zoning rules, reduce the size of building lots, or allow multifamily or apartment buildings in single-family residential neighborhoods are practicing racism or discrimination. Because I don't think that. I think that they're trying to maintain the character of their towns, and that people that lived there and chose various communities around our state did it because they want to live in a community that is a certain way, that has a certain feel to it. It doesn't have a lot of apartment buildings on a quiet street, for example. And I just like your clarification on that, and I look forward to hopefully debating these issues at more length in the Senate. Thank you.
Thank you.